My husband still had my sister-in-law's dark red lipstick on his mouth when he told me not to embarrass him at our wedding. I stood in the doorway of the barrel room at Vale Ridge Winery with one hand wrapped around the ivory shawl that had belonged to my mother. 3 hours earlier, Weston Vale had cried while promising to honor me in front of 180 people. Now his tuxedo jacket hung open, Dana's satin bridesmaid dress was pulled crooked at one shoulder, and her palms were pressed against a wall of oak barrels as if the room had tilted beneath her. I had gone upstairs because the bandleader was waiting for our first dance. Weston had disappeared from the head table, and so had Dana, my brother's wife and the woman who had organized nearly every detail of the reception. I assumed they were fixing some last-minute disaster. At 34, I still believed most silences had decent explanations. "Tell me I'm not seeing this," I said. Dana turned toward me. Her eyes widened, but no tears came. "Marissa, it was a stupid moment. Your wedding, all the pressure, the champagne, my wedding didn't put my husband's hands on you." Weston walked toward me, not to apologize, but to close his fingers around my upper arm. His voice dropped into the calm, careful tone he used with employees he meant to fire. "Keep your voice down. My father has investors downstairs. If you make a scene, everyone will think you're having another episode." I stared at him. "Another episode? You've barely slept since your mother died. People understand grief. Let them understand this as grief too." That was the moment the betrayal changed shape. He was not afraid he had broken me. He was afraid someone important might see the pieces. I pulled away hard enough to tear the seam under my sleeve and ran. The staircase curved down into the glass-roofed courtyard where the reception glittered beneath strings of white lights. My dress caught on the iron banister and ripped along the skirt. The sound was small, almost delicate, but every step after it felt like a gunshot. I reached the floor just as the band began the song my mother used to hum while she stitched hems after midnight. On the screen behind the musicians was a photograph of Weston and me beneath the winery's stone arch, smiling like people who had never lied to each other. Weston appeared a few seconds later with Dana behind him. Before I could reach the microphone, he took it from the bandleader. "Family and friends, forgive the pause," he said with a warm, practiced smile. "Marissa is overwhelmed and has had more champagne than usual. Losing her mother last year has made big days difficult. We're going to give her a little space." The room changed around me. Smiles fell. A few people looked at the floor. Weston's aunt whispered to someone that I had always seemed fragile. His mother, Elaine, folded her napkin with excruciating precision. No one asked me what had happened. Weston had used my mother's death to turn me into an unstable bride before I could say a word. I walked onto the dance floor, took the microphone from his hand, and heard my own breathing through the speakers. I found my husband kissing Dana in the barrel room. The silence was so complete that I heard water dropping from the courtyard fountain. Dana came down the stairs with both hands trembling. I was trying to calm him down. Marissa saw what she expected to see. "Did calming him down require pulling your dress off your shoulder?" Someone near the cake gasped. Weston kept smiling, but the muscles at the corners of his mouth went rigid. "You will regret humiliating this family," he whispered. I searched the crowd for my brother. Noah stood beside the cake table, motionless, his face drained of color. Dana took one step toward him. "Noah, please. I can explain." He did not look at her. He crossed the floor to me and asked one question. "You saw them?" I nodded. Noah closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them again, pain was there, but so was a terrible certainty. Weston gave a bitter laugh. "Control your sister, Noah." My brother reached inside his suit jacket and removed a thick brown envelope. "For 2 months, I've been trying to understand why my wife was taking money from our accounts and why your name appeared on every transfer," he said. "I hired an investigator 3 weeks ago. I wanted to be wrong. That's why I didn't tell Marissa before the wedding." Dana went pale. "Not here. You chose her wedding to finish whatever this is." Noah opened the envelope across the nearest table. Photographs slid over the white linen, Weston and Dana entering a hotel in Washington, Dana climbing into Weston's car outside a private poker club, the two of them laughing over lunch while I was tasting cake with Elaine. There were hotel bills paid by Bright Path Arts, the non-profit Dana ran, and messages arranging secret meetings while she helped me choose flowers. The last sheet was not a photograph. It carried the logo of Vale Development Group and the heading, Collateral Authorization, Magnolia House Heritage Project. Magnolia House was the red brick Victorian my mother had left me in Richmond. She had bought it when I was 11 after altering wedding gowns and police uniforms for nearly 15 years. I planned to turn its ground floor into a communication studio and retail collective for local craftspeople. Below the property description was a line for my signature. Beside it, in Weston's handwriting, someone had written, "Obtain spouse acknowledgement during final reception payments." I lifted my eyes to the man who still wore my ring. You married me for my mother's house. Dana made a broken sound. Behind me. Weston leaned close enough that no one else could hear. Sign tonight, or tomorrow everyone will hear that you and your brother destroyed 2 marriages because grief made you paranoid. Rachel Pierce, my oldest friend and wedding photographer, stepped between us before I could answer. She had known me since college and possessed the particular courage of someone who had once driven 4 hours through a snowstorm because I sounded sad on the phone. Don't touch her, Rachel said. Weston looked over her shoulder at the tables, calculating how much control he still had. Then his father, Malcolm Vale, appeared beside him. Malcolm was 67, silver-haired, and built like an old courthouse. He did not ask what Weston had done. He asked where the investors were. Private dining room, Elaine answered quietly. Keep them there. No one leaves until we know what has been photographed. My stomach turned. The Vale family instinct was not remorse. It was containment. The venue coordinator led Noah, Rachel, my father, and me through a service corridor to the bridal suite. I could not make myself take off my dress. It felt as though removing it would mean admitting my marriage had lasted less time than the salmon course. Through the closed door, I could hear the band begin another song. Staff were trying to rescue the reception as if it were a damaged event instead of a crime scene with centerpieces. That was what Weston had always been good at, making appearances feel more urgent than truth. I met him 3 years earlier at a preservation fundraiser inside the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. I had designed the campaign for a group restoring storefronts in Jackson Ward. Weston had donated the wine. He spent most of the evening surrounded by people who wanted something from him, yet he crossed the room to ask why my brochure featured a tailor's chalk mark as its logo. I told him about Mom. I told him she believed a handmade object carried the hours of a person's life and should never be treated as cheap just because the maker lacked power. Weston listened without checking his phone. Later, he found the storefront where she had worked and sent her a framed photograph of its original sign. That gesture lived in my mind whenever something about him felt wrong. He was generous in public and impatient in private. He remembered the birthdays of waiters but criticized me for paying freelancers before clients paid me. He said my caution came from growing up without money. When I refused to sell Magnolia House during the hottest year of Richmond's real estate market, he called me sentimental and then apologized with a weekend in Charleston. I mistook his ability to repair an argument for respect. After Mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, Weston became indispensable. He arranged meal deliveries, drove Dad to appointments, and sat beside me through the first night in hospice. When I could not choose a funeral home, he chose one. When I could not answer messages, he answered them. Grief made control feel like shelter. The proposal came 7 months later in Magnolia House's empty front parlor. He had placed candles along the baseboards and played Mom's favorite Ella Fitzgerald record. I said yes before he finished asking. I thought he was honoring the house. Now I wondered whether he had been measuring it. Dana was there that night too. She brought champagne and took the photograph we used for our engagement announcement. She hugged me and whispered that Mom had sent Weston because she knew I needed someone strong. Dana had married Noah 8 years earlier and gradually become more sister than friend. She knew the code to Magnolia House. She knew where Mom kept the deed. She helped me pack Mother's clothes and chose which blue thread we would use to repair the shawl. The betrayal was not only that 2 people had lied to me. It was that they had used the map of my trust to decide where to enter. I sat before the bridal suite mirror and studied all the signs I had edited out of my own memory. Weston's fascination with the property's appraisal. Dana's sudden insistence that a heritage inn would honor Mom more than my small studio. Their private jokes during planning meetings. A month earlier, I had walked into the kitchen and found them standing too far apart, both looking at a folder on the counter. Dana said it was a seating chart. I apologized for interrupting. None of those moments proved an affair by themselves. That was the cruelty of hindsight. It turned ordinary confusion into evidence and made me ashamed for having once been innocent. Noah placed the envelope on the vanity beside the earrings my mother had given me. I'm sorry. I thought if I waited until after the honeymoon, I'd have proof strong enough to protect you. You knew she was having an affair? I knew she was lying. I knew money was disappearing. I didn't know the man was Weston until yesterday, and I didn't know about Magnolia House until the investigator sent that document during dinner. I was trying to get you alone. Anger rose so fast I almost welcomed it. You let me say vows to him. Noah flinched. Yes. I did. I will hate myself for that longer than you will. My father, Thomas Hart, entered without knocking. At 63, he still wore the navy suit my mother had selected for their 35th anniversary. His face looked gray under the vanity lights. He did not ask whether I had misunderstood. He had watched Weston turn my grief into a weapon. Dad lifted Mother's shawl from the back of a chair and settled it around my shoulders. It was cream wool embroidered with tiny blue flowers, worn soft at the edges from years of winter church services. Your mother paid the mortgage on Magnolia House one zipper and one hem at a time, he said. No one is turning it into the price of this betrayal. Rachel came in carrying her tablet. I asked the venue manager for the hallway camera feed. I told her Weston was already trying to rewrite what happened. The footage showed Dana entering the barrel room 20 minutes before Weston. Then Weston approached, looked in both directions, closed the door, and hung a service closed sign on the handle. It wasn't a mistake, I said. They scheduled it. My phone vibrated. A message from Weston appeared beneath our wedding portrait. Tomorrow, 12 p.m., family brunch at Vale Ridge. Sign the collateral authorization and I will call tonight wedding stress. Refuse, and my attorneys will pursue you for defamation. Noah will be named in the non-profit theft investigation. Noah read it over my shoulder. Something in him became very still. Now I open everything, he said. We left through the catering entrance while guests were still being served coffee. Dad drove us to his small house in Henrico County, the one he and Mom had bought after selling Magnolia House to her sewing business and then buying it back from the bank. The story of that house was complicated because every worthwhile inheritance is complicated. It was not just brick and wood. It was proof that my mother had refused to stay poor simply because poverty expected obedience. At 1:30 a.m., I sat at Dad's kitchen table in my torn wedding dress while Noah downloaded bank statements Dana had hidden behind a password-protected cloud account. Rachel made coffee and documented every file before we touched it. The ordinary hum of the refrigerator felt obscene beside the words wire transfer, escrow, and guarantee. Noah worked with the focus he used in emergency rooms. He was a respiratory therapist, the person families met when breathing stopped being automatic. That night his own breath kept catching, but his hands moved steadily across the keyboard. Every few minutes he wrote a file name and timestamp in a yellow legal pad because Rachel warned. That careless handling could let Weston's lawyers challenge the evidence. When did you first notice the money? I asked. January. Dana said a transfer was for a surprise anniversary trip. Then she canceled the trip but the money never came back. Why didn't you confront her? I did. She showed me a fake refund statement. I wanted the document to be real so badly that I stopped looking at the font. I understood. Love did not always blind people by hiding facts. Sometimes it made them stare directly at a fact and negotiate with it until it became bearable. Dad opened a cabinet and took out the chipped green mug Mom used during tax season. He set it in front of me without coffee. I ran my thumb over the crack in its handle. She wanted me to sell the house if keeping it ever made me miserable, I said. Keeping it isn't what made you miserable. Someone trying to take it did. What if I turned it into a burden because I needed her plan to keep living? Dad sat beside me. Your mother did not leave you a command. She left you a choice. That is exactly what Weston is trying to remove. The distinction settled inside me. Magnolia House mattered because I was free to keep it, change it, sell it, or fail with it. Ownership was not just a deed. It was the right to make an imperfect decision without a powerful man replacing it with his own. Bright Path Arts had been created to fund apprenticeships for young makers, woodworkers, textile artists, metalsmiths, and ceramicists, who could not afford unpaid training. I had written its launch campaign for free. My mother had donated the first $5,000. Dana had become the public face of the organization, appearing at galas beside scholarship recipients and talking about preserving dignity through craft. Over 9 months, Bright Path had transferred $214,000 to Arden Strategy Partners, a consulting company registered to a mailbox in Delaware. The descriptions included wedding installation, brand research, heritage acquisition deposit, and Magnolia advance. Noah traced the registration contact to Vale Development's deputy finance director. My wedding was not only the setting for the betrayal. It was one of the invoices. At 4:18 a.m., I found an email Dana had forwarded to herself and deleted. The subject read Spousal Capacity Memorandum. A lawyer working for Vale Development had drafted talking points describing me as emotionally impaired following recent bereavement and suggesting that Weston might seek temporary authority over marital assets if I resisted the project. I read the sentence 3 times. He planned for me to say no, I whispered. The signature was the easy way. If I refused, he planned to call me incompetent. Dad pushed back from the table so abruptly his chair struck the wall. I will bury him in court. Rachel held up a hand. We need a lawyer before we promise anybody a burial. I know one, I said. Her name was Evelyn Brooks, and she had represented my mother during the foreclosure dispute. That nearly cost us Magnolia House 18 years earlier. She was now a respected property attorney in Richmond and had the unnerving habit of becoming quieter when everyone else became loud. At 4:36 a.m., I sent her the documents with a message that began, "I am sorry about the hour," and ended, "I got married yesterday and I think my husband is trying to steal my house." She called 6 minutes later. "Do not sign anything," she said. "Do not surrender the original deed. Do not meet Weston alone. Preserve the message he sent. And Marissa, tell me precisely where the marriage license is." I looked at Rachel. She had photographed it beside the guest book before the ceremony. The officiant had it. "Find out whether it was filed. The answer changes our fastest route, though not the fraud." At 5:07 a.m., someone knocked on Dad's front door. Dana stood on the porch without makeup, her burgundy dress hidden under a gray raincoat. Her hair was wet from the mist. She looked smaller than she had beneath the reception lights, but not innocent. Noah moved behind me as if seeing her might physically knock him down. "I didn't come to ask you to forgive me," Dana said. "I came because Weston is going to blame all of it on me." She reached into a canvas tote and removed the original deed book. "For Magnolia House." I recognized the faint coffee ring on its leather cover, left by my mother during a late-night argument with the bank. "I took it from your desk during the bridal shower," Dana said. "Weston told me it was only needed for title research." Noah's voice sounded scraped raw. "Why would you do that?" Dana pressed her fist to her mouth. "I owed money." "How much?" "At first, $18,000. Then I borrowed to win it back. Online blackjack, sportsbooks, private games. By February it was over $130,000. Weston paid the people who were threatening to expose me. After that, every favor became something I owed him." "Did you sleep with him because you owed him?" Noah asked. Dana finally looked at him. "No. I did that because I was selfish and terrified and wanted to feel chosen by the person who could erase my consequences." "Don't make it cleaner than it was." Her honesty did not make the truth kinder. It only removed the last place she could hide. "Why should any of us believe you now?" I asked. "Because after you caught us, I heard him talking to Malcolm in the library. Weston said the authorization would be signed by noon. He said if you resisted, the capacity memorandum was ready. Then he said the theft at Bright Path would be assigned to me, and he would remain the concerned husband of a grieving woman." Dana put her phone on the table and played a recording. Weston's voice came through clearly. "Dana was useful, but she's disposable. Magnolia closes tomorrow. After that, she becomes the thief, Noah becomes the angry husband, and Marissa becomes too unstable to understand the transaction." Another male voice answered, but it was too distant to identify. "You said the non-profit money was clean. It will be once the house secures the line." Noah sat down as if the bones had left his body. Dana reached toward him. He raised one hand. "Do not look for comfort in my sister's house." "This isn't her house," Dana said weakly. Dad placed both hands on the kitchen table. "Every place she is safe is her house tonight." He took the deed and tucked it under his arm. Dana told us more. Weston had first approached her after a Bright Path fundraiser 11 months earlier. He offered to introduce donors, then covered a gambling marker after one of her lenders threatened to call Noah. Within weeks, Arden Strategy began invoicing the nonprofit. Dana approved payments, telling herself they were temporary loans. Weston kept spreadsheets of her debts and copied messages that could destroy her career. The affair began 5 months later. By then, she said, fear and desire had become so tangled she stopped pretending. She knew where one ended. "He said marrying you solved everything," she told me. "As your husband, he could present the project as a family investment. Your house would secure a $4.8 million credit line. Once the first draw cleared, he would replace the Bright Path money and pay my debts." "And you believed he would protect you?" "I believed I was special to him. That's the humiliating truth." Noah stared at the woman he had loved for 9 years. "You were special enough to help him rob my sister." Dana did not answer. At 5:42 a.m., Evelyn joined us by video call. We held documents up to the camera and sent her the recording. Her face revealed almost nothing until Dana explained the planned brunch. "They invited investors and 3 business reporters," Dana said. "Weston wanted the signature photographed as the launch of Vale Heritage Homes." Evelyn removed her glasses. "Good. I thought exhaustion had made me mishear. Good. A private fraud hides. A public fraud produces witnesses. If you attend, you do not improvise. You do not accuse anyone of crimes you cannot document. You state facts, ask questions, and let them answer where everyone can hear. Rachel records the entire interaction. I will be there." Noah shook his head. "She shouldn't have to walk back into that place." "No," I said. "I shouldn't. But Weston expects a broken bride who is desperate to save face. If I stay home, he gets to describe me. I am finished letting him describe me." Dana looked at me. "He will have security. Then you will tell them you are invited." "You want me there?" I want the truth there. Don't confuse that with wanting you. By 7 a.m., the sky had turned pearl gray. I finally removed my wedding dress. The zipper caught halfway, and Rachel had to cut the last inch of thread. I stood in Dad's spare room wearing a white slip, looking at the dress pooled on the carpet. It was still beautiful. Beauty, I realized, had never been evidence of safety. I slept for 47 minutes. When I woke, Dad had pressed a simple ivory dress that had belonged to Mom. It was not a wedding dress, just a clean linen sheath she wore to gallery openings. Rachel pinned my hair into a low knot. I draped Mother's shawl around my shoulders and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman reflected there did not look unhurt. Her eyes were swollen. A red mark darkened her arm where Weston had grabbed her. But she did not look confused either. At 9:20 a.m., the officiant called Rachel back. He had noticed the argument at the reception and had taken the signed marriage license home rather than leaving it with the venue coordinator, who worked closely with Vale Ridge. He had not filed it. I wasn't sure what was happening, he said over speakerphone. I thought someone should ask Marissa before making anything official. Evelyn's voice remained calm. Keep it secure and file nothing until instructed. Weston believed the marriage had already expanded his legal access to me. In the eyes of the state, the paperwork that made it official had never left the officiant's briefcase. It did not erase what happened, and Evelyn warned that ceremony and cohabitation questions could still require formal action. But it stripped urgency from Weston's threat. He had built his leverage around a door that was not yet locked. At 10:05 a.m., another message arrived from him. Wear something appropriate. We can still protect your reputation. I took a screenshot and turned off read receipts. At 10:40 a.m., we met Evelyn in the parking lot of a grocery store 12 miles from the winery. She brought a younger attorney named Marcus Lee and 3 identical binders. One held originals, one held copies, and one contained only documents we were willing to show publicly. She also brought a small digital recorder. Evelyn rehearsed the brunch with us beside a row of shopping carts. It was the least glamorous strategy meeting of my life. She made me practice saying, "I do not consent," without explaining why. She made Noah practice answering questions about the investigator without insulting Dana. She told Rachel exactly when to connect the tablet and when to keep recording even if security asked her to stop. Weston will try to move you from facts to emotion, Evelyn said. He knows emotion is where observers have already been taught to distrust you. I am emotional. Of course you are. Calm is not the absence of emotion. It is refusing to let him choose what your emotion means. Dana stood several yards away under the grocery store awning. She had changed clothes in a gas station restroom. Rainwater darkened the shoulders of her blouse. I watched Noah notice that she was cold and then stop himself from offering his coat. The movement lasted less than a second, but it contained their whole marriage, care arriving by instinct and being refused by knowledge. I walked over to her. At the brunch, do not minimize what you did. If you call it a mistake, I will correct you. I know. Do you? Last night you said it was champagne. This morning you said Weston pressured you. Both statements made your choices sound like weather. Dana's face tightened. I chose him. I chose the money. I chose to take the deed. And Noah? She looked past me at my brother. I kept choosing the version of Noah who didn't know. I don't think I saw the real man for months. He was real the entire time. I know that now. I wanted to slap her. I wanted her to collapse at my feet. I wanted an apology powerful enough to return all 4 of us to the morning before the wedding. Instead, I said, tell the truth where he can hear it. That is all you get to give us today. As I turned away, Dana spoke softly. Marissa, Weston hated that you never needed his money. He joked about it at first. Then he started saying your mother had trained you to worship struggle. I should have told you. The revelation was small compared with fraud, but it cut deeper. Weston's tenderness toward my independence had always carried resentment beneath it. He had not wanted to join my life. He wanted my life to prove it needed him. There is one more issue, Evelyn said. Bright Path's treasurer contacted me after Noah's investigator asked about Arden's strategy. She has been saving board minutes and denied reimbursement requests because the amounts did not match. She can establish that Dana bypassed controls. She also says Weston's finance director pressured her to change 2 sets of minutes. Dana closed her eyes. Will she testify? Noah asked. She already gave a statement to the state charity regulator this morning. The first reversal had been the deed in Dana's tote. The second was the unfiled license. The third was now moving without any of us. The charity's own treasurer had refused to let the missing money disappear. I expected triumph. Instead I felt grief so deep it seemed to come from the ground. Every new piece of protection proved how elaborate the danger had been. Evelyn watched me carefully. You can still choose not to go. If I don't go, will the evidence survive? Yes. Will Weston tell those reporters I had a breakdown? Almost certainly. I picked up the public binder. Then let's arrive before he writes the headline. Vale Ridge occupied 600 acres of rolling Virginia foothills, all split-rail fences, stone tasting rooms, and rows of vines that looked orderly enough to suggest no ugly thing had ever happened there. When our car reached the main building at 11:48 a.m., staff were replacing flowers from my reception with arrangements in Vale corporate blue. A sign in the lobby read, Weston and Marissa Vale, a new American heritage. I had not taken his name. That detail made me laugh for the first time since the barrel room. It was not a happy laugh. It was the sound a locked door might make when the wrong key breaks inside it. The private dining room held about 40 people, relatives, winery executives, lenders, local preservation officials, and the 3 reporters Dana had mentioned. A screen displayed a photograph of Weston and me at the altar. Beneath it, an architectural rendering showed Magnolia House converted into a luxury inn with a glass addition cutting through my mother's sewing room. Weston crossed the room wearing a navy suit and a serene smile. The lipstick was gone. So was his wedding ring. Thank you for coming, he said. I'm glad you're calmer. I am completely calm. He looked at Noah, then Dad, then Evelyn. His smile narrowed. This was meant to be family. You invited reporters. For the project. So did I. He leaned toward me. Do not do something irreversible because you misunderstood a private moment. You hung a sign on the door. For the first time, his expression cracked. At the head table, the Magnolia collateral authorization lay beside a gold pen. Malcolm Vale stood behind it, one hand on a leather portfolio. Elaine sat near the window with both palms wrapped around a coffee cup she did not drink from. Marissa, Malcolm said, our family handles disagreements discreetly. Weston tells me you experienced some confusion last night. Your son was found with my brother's wife 3 hours after marrying me. The reporters looked up. Weston stepped closer. This is exactly the instability I warned you about. Then let's make the next 10 minutes very stable. Rachel connected her tablet to the screen. Our altar photograph vanished. The hallway video appeared, Dana entering the barrel room, Weston checking the corridor, the door closing, the service closed sign swinging from the handle. No one spoke while the timestamp advanced 23 minutes. Then Rachel displayed the hotel photographs and messages. I did not narrate them. Silence did more damage. Malcolm struck the table with his palm. Turn that off. An affair does not invalidate a development agreement. You're right, I said. That is why we also brought the development agreement. Noah opened the binder to the Bright Path transfers. Evelyn distributed copies of bank records showing $214,000 moving to Arden Strategy Hotel. Charges disguised as wedding installation expenses, and the proposed $4.8 million credit line secured by Magnolia House. Malcolm looked at Weston. You told me the property owner had approved the project. She would have today, Weston said. Marissa and I discussed investing together for months. We discussed renovating the kitchen, I said. We never discussed turning my mother's home into a hotel. Weston gestured toward me as though my refusal proved his point. She has been emotional and forgetful since her mother died. I have emails documenting concern about her capacity. Evelyn stepped forward. I would be interested to see those emails, especially the one your attorney drafted before the wedding describing the refusal your client had not yet made. The room shifted again. I removed the original deed book from my bag and placed it beside the unsigned authorization. I never provided this. It was stolen from my desk. The doors opened behind us. Dana entered wearing black trousers and a plain gray blouse. Her eyes were swollen, but her back was straight. Noah's hands tightened at his sides. He did not move toward her. I took the deed, Dana said. I hid the transfers. I approved false invoices because I had gambling debts. But Weston designed the plan. He told me Magnolia House would cover the credit line, replace the nonprofit money, and pay what I owed. One reporter lifted a phone to record. Malcolm stared at Dana with open disgust. A confessed thief blaming her lover, Weston said. Convenient. Dana placed her phone on the table. Then listen to yourself. The recording filled the room. Dana was useful, but she's disposable. Magnolia closes tomorrow. After that, she becomes the thief, Noah becomes the angry husband, and Marissa becomes too unstable to understand the transaction. The distant voice asked, you said the non-profit money was clean. It will be once the house secures the line. Weston lunged for the phone. Malcolm caught his wrist. Was that me in the room with you? Malcolm asked. Weston froze. Dana shook her head. It was Grant Hollis, your deputy finance director. Malcolm's face did not soften, but something like shock passed through it. He had assumed the recording implicated him. Weston had allowed all of us to assume it because confusion was another form of cover. The door opened once more. Marcus Lee entered with a woman I recognized from Bright Path events, Camille Foster, the nonprofit treasurer. She carried a red accordion folder. "I apologize for arriving late," Camille said. "The state investigator asked me to finish signing my declaration." Dana sank into the nearest chair. Camille laid out board minutes, rejected invoices, and emails from Grant instructing her to backdate approval for Arden strategy. One email included Weston himself. "If Camille remains difficult, Dana can certify emergency authority. Magnolia proceeds next week, and everything balances by quarter close." For months, Weston had made each of us feel isolated. I was the grieving daughter. Noah was the suspicious husband. Dana was the indebted secret. Camille was the inconvenient accountant. The scheme worked only while none of us compared what we knew. Malcolm read the email twice. His shoulders seemed to age as he read it. "You used my company," he said to Weston. "I was saving it," Weston answered. "The hotel division is bleeding cash. The lenders wanted hard collateral. Magnolia was undervalued and Marissa wasn't doing anything with it. I was building a studio." He rounded on me. "You were holding a $3 million asset so neighborhood artists could sell bowls and scarves. I was giving it a future." That sentence did what the affair had not. It revealed the oldest betrayal beneath all the others. Weston had never misunderstood what Magnolia House meant to me. He understood exactly and decided his vision outranked mine. My mother spent 15 years making other women beautiful for their weddings so she could own one safe place, I said. "You looked at that life and saw collateral." Weston turned to the lenders. "This is a domestic dispute. The project remains sound." Evelyn closed her binder. "The owner has not signed. The original deed was obtained without permission. The nonprofit transactions are under active state review. And any attempt to represent Ms. Hart as your legal spouse should account for the fact that the marriage license has not been filed." Weston's face emptied. "What?" Rachel held up her phone. The officiant appeared on video from his kitchen, the license visible inside a clear document sleeve. "I retained the license after witnessing coercive behavior at the reception," he said. "I will follow legal counsel regarding its disposition." Elaine made a sharp sound and covered it with her hand. Malcolm looked from the screen to his son. Weston stared at me. "You arranged that?" "I didn't know until this morning." "That's what makes it different from your plan." One of the reporters asked whether Vale Development had used charitable funds to support the hotel division. Malcolm raised a hand for silence, then turned to his chief operating officer. "Suspend the Magnolia project immediately. Freeze Grant Hollis's access. Weston is removed from every management and representative role pending an independent investigation. Notify our lenders and outside counsel." Weston laughed once, too loudly. "You cannot do that in front of them." "You did it in front of them," Malcolm said. "I am only naming the consequence." Weston stepped toward his father. "I can fix this. Do not call fraud a repair." Then Malcolm looked at me. For the first time, his authority was not aimed at silencing me. "The company will release any claim, draft, or proposed interest involving Magnolia House today. We will fund an independent audit of Bright Path and cooperate with investigators. This is not an apology sufficient for what happened. It is the minimum action I owe." I believed he meant it. I also understood that he was protecting the company. Both things could be true. Weston turned back to me, panic finally stripping the polish from his voice. "Marissa, if you destroy this, you destroy both of us. We can leave now. We can tell them the pressure got out of control. Think about everything we planned." I took my wedding ring from a pocket in Mother's dress. I had removed it before entering the winery. I placed it on the unsigned authorization beside the gold pen. "You destroyed me last night," I said. "Today I'm walking out of the wreckage." Noah removed his own ring. His hand shook as he set it beside mine. "So am I." Dana began to cry. This time the tears were real. "Noah, I am sick. The gambling changed me. Weston used it." Noah looked at her for a long time. I watched love remain in his face even as trust left it. "He used your debt," he said. "You used my love. I hope you get treatment. I will not be the place you hide from what you did." Dana bowed her head. Security arrived, but Malcolm directed them toward Weston's office instead of us. Grant had not come to the brunch. By the time company counsel called him, he had cleared his desk and disabled his phone. That flight became another piece of evidence. As we crossed the lobby, staff were already taking down the sign that called me Marissa Vale. Dad paused beneath it. "You never were," he said. I looked at Mother's blue flowers across my shoulders. "No. I never was." Outside, the afternoon was bright and cold. Vines stretched toward the mountains in perfect rows. I had believed breathing again would feel dramatic. It felt ordinary, air entered, air left, and no one could sign my name to it. We did not celebrate. Dad drove to a roadside diner, and the four of us sat in a booth beneath a flickering sign while I still wore Mother's dress. Rachel ordered pancakes because she said time had lost meaning. Noah stared at the laminated menu without reading it. When the waitress called me Han, I nearly cried from the uncomplicated kindness of it. My phone filled with messages. Some guests apologized for believing Weston. Others asked whether the affair rumor was true as if they were requesting weather information. A cousin I had met twice advised me to stay quiet for the sake of future employment. Someone had already posted 18 seconds of the barrel room hallway footage online with dramatic music. I turned the phone face down. "You don't have to answer anyone," Rachel said. "He made my silence dangerous last night. Now everyone wants my voice." Evelyn, who had followed us to the diner, stirred tea she never drank. "You can speak once in a controlled statement. Truth does not require permanent access to you." Together we wrote 5 sentences. I confirmed that I had refused to authorize any interest in Magnolia House, that evidence concerning Bright Path had been referred to the proper authorities, and that I would not discuss private details while investigations continued. I did not call Weston a monster. I did not call Dana a victim. I did not defend my mental health to strangers. The statement ended, "Grief is not incapacity, and trust is not consent." Within an hour, that final sentence appeared in headlines. For once, the words attached to my face were mine. The next 6 weeks were quieter than the wedding and far more difficult. Public exposure did not turn pain into a clean victory. It created paperwork, interviews, cancelled checks, lawyers' offices, and 3 a.m. moments when I remembered the shape of Weston's hand on Dana's waist. Evelyn filed for a declaration that no valid marriage had been created and, in the alternative, an annulment based on fraud and coercion. Weston's attorneys initially threatened to fight. They withdrew after Rachel's footage and his capacity memorandum became evidence. The court order arrived 39 days after the wedding. It did not say I had never loved him. It said love had not authorized theft. The state charity regulator froze Bright Path's remaining funds and appointed an interim administrator. Camille's records showed that $71,000 of the missing money had never reached Weston or Grant. Dana had used it to cover gambling losses. She signed a cooperation agreement, entered residential treatment, and later pleaded guilty to financial charges. Her cooperation reduced the penalty, but it did not erase it. Noah moved into an apartment 8 minutes from Dad. Some nights we ate takeout barbecue from paper containers because using real plates felt like an unreasonable commitment. He rarely spoke about Dana at first. When he did, he asked questions no one could answer, whether she had ever loved him, which memories were true, whether noticing sooner would have saved her or only exposed the damage earlier. I told him what Rachel had told me: betrayal does not make every earlier kindness counterfeit. It means the person who offered kindness also chose cruelty. Holding both truths is painful, but it is more honest than rewriting a whole life. Weston was charged months later with conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempted property fraud. Grant was arrested in Maryland after using a company card at an airport hotel. Investigators found internal forecasts showing Vail's hotel division had lost nearly $2 million. Weston had not been rescuing a thriving family dream. He had been hiding failure behind my mother's house. Malcolm resigned as chief executive during the investigation. No evidence showed he knew about the charity transfers before the brunch, but company emails proved he had encouraged Weston to secure family property quickly and had ignored questions about consent. His consequence was not as dramatic as his son's. It was perhaps more complete. The name he had protected became inseparable from the scandal he tried to contain. Elaine mailed me a handwritten letter. She apologized for looking down when Weston called me unstable. She wrote that silence had become the Vail family's preferred language, because it allowed everyone to believe they were innocent. I did not answer for 2 months. When I finally did, I wrote only, "You were not responsible for his choices. You were responsible for what you did when you saw them." Rachel developed the wedding photographs but let me choose whether to see them. Most stayed in a locked archive. I kept one image taken 20 minutes before the ceremony. Noah and I were laughing beside the catering tent because he had spilled coffee on his cuff. Weston and Dana were not in the frame. "Are you sure?" Rachel asked when I selected it. "It's proof the entire day wasn't a lie." Magnolia House had been empty for 14 months while I saved for renovations. After the investigation began, craftspeople who had known my mother started showing up. A carpenter repaired the porch at cost. A retired electrician rewired the first floor and refused payment until opening day. Camille introduced me to 4 artists whose Bright Path scholarships had vanished. I offered them paid launch contracts instead. The work did not heal me in a cinematic montage. I cried in paint stores. I froze when contractors asked for signatures. I checked every invoice 3 times. Once, a delivery driver wearing Weston's cologne stepped through the front door, and I had to sit on the stairs until my hands stopped shaking. But each decision belonged to me. I named the studio Magnolia Common. Its purpose was simple: help independent makers tell the stories of what they created and sell their work without surrendering ownership. The front parlor became a photography room filled with clean northern light. Mother's old sewing room became a small shop with shelves for ceramics, textiles, jewelry, and woodwork. I kept the scar in the floor where her industrial machine had stood. On opening morning, Dad hung Mother's shawl in a glass case near the entrance. Beneath it, we placed a brass plaque. What a woman builds with dignity is not surrendered through fear. Noah arrived carrying the framed wedding photograph. He had gained back some weight. The exhaustion around his eyes remained, but his smile no longer looked borrowed. "I thought this belonged here," he said. I placed it on the desk beside a photograph of Mom at 42, leaning over a blue silk gown with a pin between her lips. "It does." Dana sent a letter from treatment. She did not ask for forgiveness. She listed every lie she remembered telling me, including small ones that had nothing to do with money. She wrote that addiction explained how fear narrowed her world but did not excuse the moment she decided my home was an acceptable price for her. Escape. I read the letter once and gave it to Noah unopened by me again. He chose not to respond. A boundary, I learned, can be an act of grief rather than punishment. On the anniversary of the wedding, we held dinner in Magnolia House's courtyard. No white dress, no string lights rented by a winery, no giant screen declaring a new family tradition. Just Dad, Noah, Rachel, Camille, the 4 launch artists, and enough food for twice as many people. Dad raised a glass of lemonade because he had stopped drinking after Mom died. "To beginnings that arrive without permission from the calendar," he said. Rachel added, "and to friends who bring cameras for the right reasons." Noah laughed without forcing it. At sunset, the brick walls turned the color of warm copper. Climbing roses had begun to cover the section where Weston's architect planned to install the glass hotel wing. I pictured the rendering from the brunch and felt no fear. His future for this place had existed only on a screen. Mine was noisy around me, chairs scraping, artists arguing over music, Dad carrying too many plates at once. I went upstairs before dessert and opened the small wooden box where I kept the ring. I had considered selling it, but Evelyn advised waiting until every case was closed. For months, I hated knowing it was in the house. Then one day it became only an object. I did not keep it to remember Weston. I kept it to remember the woman who had stood in a torn wedding dress while a roomful of people waited to see whether she would accept someone else's version of her. My marriage lasted 3 hours in public and 39 days on paper. The shame belonged to me for less than a minute. I carried the ring downstairs and placed it in the donation envelope for a legal fund that helped women protect inherited property from coercive partners. Then I returned to the courtyard, where Mother's shawl glowed behind glass and the people I still trusted had saved me a chair. For the first time, Magnolia House did not feel like something I had nearly lost. It felt like the place where I had finally refused to disappear.